Hello and welcome, everyone. It isn't often that the London Ballet Circle has two in conversations within 4 days. In fact, this is the first time it's ever happened. But then again, it isn't often we have an opportunity to meet one of the leading ballerinas of the American ballet scene. And tonight we do have that opportunity as Tyler Peck, principal with New York City Ballet, is with us. If this is the first time you've joined an LBC in conversation, I think you've chosen an excellent one to start with. Tyler will be here in London presenting her highly anticipated show, Turn It Out with Tyler Peck and Friends at Sadler's Wells from March 9th to the 11th. But at the moment, she's very busy in New York City, where the New York City Ballet is performing Sleeping Beauty, and Tyler is an absolutely outstanding Aurora. So we're very fortunate that we have caught her on a day off when she doesn't have to dance. Leading tonight's conversation is Leanne Benjamin. Leanne needs no introduction to the LBC, and I'm really pleased that she's come back to do this chat. As it turns out, she and Tyler are old friends and they've worked together, so I think we're in for a very comfortable evening. Although this evening is about Tyler and her work, I would like to take this opportunity to say to Leanne how impressed and delighted and proud we are to hear that you've been named the Australian of the Year in the UK for 2023. Congratulations, that's great.
Thank you very much, Susan, thank you.
If you have any questions for Tyler, she's happy to take them, so please type them in the chat box at the bottom of your screen, and please give your first name when asking a question. So that's all from me. And now it gives me great pleasure to hand over to Leanne Benjamin and tonight's In Conversation guest, Tyler Peck.
Thank you so much, Susan. Tyler, it's so great to see you.
I feel the same way. It's been way too long.
So we tell everybody how we met.
Yes. Yes.
It was many years ago. We were very, very fortunate to be part of Christopher Wheeldon's small company, Morphosis. And it was during that tour, we met at Vail, Colorado, I believe, quite a few years ago. And we do have a bit of a funny story which connected us.
Yes.
Involves one of my biggest ballets in the repertoire.
I remember being just so starstruck because I'm pretty sure that I was the newbie of the company. You know, I was the youngest one there and I just idolized you. And I remember I was getting ready to do Giselle for not the ballet at New York City Ballet, but just a guesting somewhere. And I had never danced it. And I remember, you know, I think you just overheard that I was dancing it. And you had asked me, have you ever done it? And I said, no. And literally, I will never forget, Leanne did the entire Giselle ballet for me in the lobby of a hotel. Like, it was incredible. I was like, this is the best masterclass ever. And it's happening in the lobby of a hotel.
So brilliant. And just while we were waiting for the bus.
Yeah.
You can rehearse anywhere. No.
Yes, you made it happen, and I learned so much just in that little amount of time. I was like, wow, this is priceless. Like, when would I ever get a coaching from Leanne Benjamin on Giselle?
Well, it's great that we've connected, and I'm just so excited that you're coming to London with your team. Turn It Out with Tyler and Friends. I absolutely love the name. We're told to turn out. And it looks like it's a really wonderful program, and there's a real buzz about it in London, I'm here to tell you. So I really can't wait to come and see you perform with you.
Thank you. I'm so excited. I love London. I haven't been there, performed there in a very long time, and I really love the show we put together, and I think the dancers that are involved are incredible, and I really hope the London audience enjoys it.
I'm sure they're going to love it. But Tyler, before we get into that, I thought it might be fun to share a little bit about your life, your early life, and your incredible career. So how did it all begin? You were 2 years old when you started dance training. What sort of training were you doing at that time?
So my mother owned a dance studio in my hometown, and it had all kinds of styles of dance. So obviously, I started at her studio, and it was tap, ballet, jazz, hip hop, gymnastics. It was literally just dancing, every kind. She was particularly the ballet teacher, and what's funny is that was actually not my favorite, and I think it was just because it's the hardest one. When you're younger, it's a lot easier to be like trying to make noise with your feet with tap shoes or dancing to a pop song that you know. And so I was always trying to get out of ballet class. And she was like, no, no, if you want to do your jazz, you have to take your ballet. And thank God she did. But yeah, I thought of myself definitely more of a jazz dancer until I went to the School of American Ballet when I was,
Yeah, I'd love to know
yeah,
at that time. And before
I,
that, musicals.
yes. So that's what took me to New York was The Music Man on Broadway. I think it was in 2000. And one of my ballet teachers in California had suggested that I look into School of American Ballet while I was in the show because you have your days free. And she was like, you really should keep up training, very good training.
Right.
And so I auditioned for SAB, and I would take at School of American Ballet during the day and then go do the Broadway show at night.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's spectacular.
And it was
and
the
then you
first time that I really loved ballet. Like I just found, I don't know if it was the balancing style or for me that I was drawn to, but I just was like, I didn't know this is what ballet could be. And
then because you are so well known for your balancing style, you are the quintessential balancing dancer, really, with your speed and your energy, etc., and your footwork. It's just so fast. But I also read that you studied with Pat and Colleen Neary. And, of course, for those of you that don't know, they were incredible stars of New York City Ballet and worked very closely with Balanchine.
yes, and that was who Patricia Neary was the one who suggested that I audition at School of American Ballet. And I remember that, she called Kay Mazzo and she said, I have this girl, she's coming to New York to do a Broadway show, but I think, you should audition her. And I remember Kay was like, well, it's the middle of the year. We're not doing auditions. And Patricia was like, I really think maybe you could try just to see her. And so that's how that happened. So I'm very lucky that Patricia Neary, like I had her in my corner.
Wow. And then tell us a little bit about your time at the school. How long did you do that hybrid version of the school and a musical? And how long was the musical for?
So I came into the musical a year after it opened, and I did it for a year. So I did that hybrid of going to School of American Ballet and performing at night for a full year. And then when the show closed, I loved SAB so much, but I really missed my family. I'm from California, and my mother and father couldn't move with me because, they had to keep working so that I could live in New York.
Yeah.
So my grandmother moved with me, who I'm very, very close with, and that's who would, drive me 3 hours to dance and back like 5 days a week when I lived in California before I moved to New York. When my mom didn't want to be my teacher anymore, and she was like,
Right.
let's send you somewhere.
Right.
But I really missed my family. So I was like, Mom, I want to come home after the year of living in New York without my family.
How old were you, Tyler?
I was 12.
Oh, you were that young.
Yes.
Oh, you were a little older than that. Oh gosh, I'm not surprised.
Yeah. So it was so fun. But I just, I missed my family. And so I went home, and the way we kind of left it with School of American Ballet was, okay, I'll keep coming to the summer courses, during this. So I came for, I think it was 3 summers before I stayed when I was 14 for the year. And that was my first official year, like just doing ballet And then after that winter term at the end was when I got in the company. It was like very, very quick. I did not expect it.
You were in the company when you were 14 or
15.
Oh, wow. That is quite young.
Apprentice. I was an apprentice. Yeah.
Because now the dancers seem to go into companies at a much later age. They all do an extra year. When I was training, it was only 2 years at the Royal Ballet Upper School, and now it's 3 years. So they're taking them in a little later. And I think it's also because, quite rightly so, it sort of joins up, connects with their education as well. Whereas in my day, it was very, very different. The education was, just, you were there to be a dancer.
Exactly.
So that's changed even since your time, I think. Probably.
Yeah, I think also the younger dancers that were getting in, were getting injured a lot. They were finding. I was lucky to get injured, but a little bit later. And it wasn't too bad. But I think that, yeah, now here you have to be like 18, 19, 20 to get into the company, which definitely wasn't that way when I got in.
Right. And tell us about your career development in New York City Ballet. What was it like getting into the company, and you really fast tracked right through the ranks at a young age?
So I think I always say that it kind of worked to my benefit getting in so young, because I didn't quite realize how big of a deal I think it was. When you're 15, you just love dancing. That's all I wanted to do was dance. And I don't think I quite realized how big this was to be in New York City Ballet. But the first day when I got there and all of these ballerinas were like right next to me at the bar, I sure was like, wow, this is incredible. But I got my core contract so fast, because if you do a certain amount of ballets, they have to give it to you. So you have like a full year, or you get, I think during my time, it was maybe 7 ballets. I think now it's much more, but they quickly learned that I was very quick. So when anybody would go out, they would throw me in, and I got my 7 ballets in like 6 months. So they had to give me my core contract. So that was why that kind of went quickly. And then I don't know, to soloist, maybe it was like a year or so. I got injured before I became soloist. So there was a little bit of like 6 months where I wasn't dancing. But I think overall, I think it was like maybe 4 or 5 years. I'm not quite sure, to get to principal, I think. So it was kind of quick, but I really do think I was lucky in the sense that I just was so excited to be dancing. I didn't even really realize it was happening.
That's so brilliant. What we might do now is take a little look at you. I think there's some footage of you doing Swan Lake. Should we have a little look?
Okay.
Gorgeous. You see, what I love is that you're so free with your dancing. And
Thanks, Leanne. I'm like, how are we watching this with Leanne watching it? That's what I was
none of us want to watch ourselves. but you know, they're fiendishly difficult, these 3-act ballets. And I heard you saying just before we came online that you've been dancing Aurora at the moment as well. And I mean, these ballets are, you know, they're the top of the ladder for every dancer to achieve. And I think it's, you know, it's just the bread and butter, and it makes everything else so much more enjoyable when you can just have more freedom and these projects that you're doing on the side. But to go back and to really have to do these 3-act ballets and these classics are what really define dancers and keep the technique, I find. I'm sure it's helping you with everything else you do.
Yeah, everything after Aurora seems easy. It's insane.
It sets the bar, doesn't it?
Yes.
But Tyler, I know you wear so many hats, and I'd love to know how you juggle your time with all the projects you do. I know that you still have Broadway performances, you have independent performances, you have written books, you are in films, you've got this project going on, you even have a clothing range. So how on earth do you do that?
I think that I have always been like, I never want to wait until the end to find out what the next step is, kind of thing. I don't know. I've always had that mentality, you know, because a dancer's career is so short, that I feel like I'm able to enjoy it more knowing that I'm already sort of paving ways for what will happen afterwards, as opposed to just waiting and then feeling like maybe I wanted to hang on forever because I don't have something waiting. I don't know how to describe that better, but the designing, like with the leotards, that just came from, as you know, like we live in our leotards. Like I'm in street clothes, like to walk across the street to the theater and then come back at night. And so for me, I just thought, okay, we've got to figure out something that, like, you know, you're not pulling up the bottom because it's rising up, and the comfort and the way it looks. So it started with just like 3 leotards, and I didn't even know if it would turn out well. I just was like, let's just try it. And then I just had a really fun time doing it. And so that was where that stemmed from, just like organically wanting to kind of fix problems that I find dancers we have. And I thought, what better way than to have, you know, a dancer who wears them all the time to be able to say, okay, like, let's fix this leg line and this and that.
I never wore a leotard without cutting it somewhere and
Yeah.
It's really bizarre. I mean, but it's true. It was either too tight in the leg, or it rode up, but it was too loose, or it was too high in the back, or too high in the. So I hear you. I remember.
Yeah. And then with this, like, say this independent project that I'm bringing to Sadler's, that was just because during the pandemic, I had just come back from a very traumatic neck injury, and I had already been off for 9 months. And I had just come back, and actually what I danced was Swan Lake. It was weird. I did Allegro and Swan Lake, which is kind of strange to think that that's what I came back to. But because it was more up and down and classical, it was actually easier for me than some of the newer works. And I just thought during the pandemic, I can't take another year off at this point in my career. You know, I'm not 18 anymore. And so I was like, I needed to be creative. And that's where 3 of the pieces that will be in the show were created during the pandemic.
Yeah, because I want to talk about that. I've got the big question for you with because you thrived in lockdown. We all really got to see you. You started these incredible online classes, beautiful and relaxed. And I used to just look in sometimes and just see how lovely and relaxed you were. And you'd have chats and all of that sort of thing, which I thought really helped everybody. And the other big highlight was working with William Forsythe. I struggle when I say William because I know him as Billy.
Yeah, and I call him Bill, so
Billy. And I mean, it really was incredible, this bar project. that you created with him. Can you tell us a little bit about that whole collaborative process? And, you know, did you make contact with him, or did he see you, or how did that happen?
So I had always, since I got in, I remember Peter Martins, our director at the time, had asked me, like, who's the #1 choreographer you want to work with? And I always just said Bill Forsyth. And it was weird because I had just seen things, you know, online, but I had never really met him. And then the company was in Paris while Bill was at the Paris Opera doing his Blake Works 1 project.
Right.
And Justin Peck, choreographer and also just friend of mine, had said, you know, Bill keeps talking about how he's watching your theme and variations every single day while he's creating this ballet. And I was like, oh my gosh, well, like, you know, he's my #1 person I want to work with. And he goes, okay, so we just got to make this happen because you both just talked to me about each other.
Wow.
So I went to the Paris Opera and I watched a rehearsal, and that was the first time I met Bill. And I just got to sit there and watch him rehearse these dancers. And I just thought, wow, I mean, I loved the ballet he did for them. And I loved getting to meet him. And we just stayed in contact. And it was so funny when this is just a little story, but it's so interesting. The night that it premiered, I was doing Serenade and with a company, New York City Ballet. And I was first on the program, and his premiere was supposed to be, I think, like second or third on the program. So he was like, well, you could dance Serenade and then get in a car and run over and maybe make the premiere. And so I was in my like stage makeup in the car racing over to the Paris Opera. Bill was like waiting for me outside. We were running in, and like literally, like, I feel like they even held the curtain for like a minute because they were waiting for Bill, who was waiting for me. But we just got along so well. And then he flew home early to see me. I remember he really wanted to see me dance Dewdrop in the Nutcracker. He was like, that's one of my favorite roles. Last time I saw it was Gelsey Kirkland. And I was like, well, that's not putting any like pressure on me.
His work is all, you know, it's technique, it's dynamic, and it has great energy. So you two are a match made in heaven. You know, I love doing Billy's stuff. I loved his work because I like to move like you did, that speed and the movement and the energy, and not to have to be rigid and just stand on one leg and balance. His work never seemed like you were dancing. It just seemed like, I don't know, it was just sort of big form of energy on the stage, and you were allowed to be as big as you wanted to be in his work. The bigger, the better. And the more
so true.
the better. And the more stretched, the better. So, you know, for someone that loves to dance, his work is exceptional.
Yes. And he just, so going back to that story, we kept trying after that Dewdrop moment to say, okay, let's make something together.
Right.
So we tried for 2 years. Like, our schedules were crazy, but we would find like 1 week, and it was like, okay, you're going to come to Vermont where he lives. He has a studio there, and we're going to make something. So we had like tickets set, everything. One year I got the flu, and I said to my mom happened to be here watching me in the Nutcracker. And I was like, I can't cancel on Bill. Like, I literally cannot cancel. And she was like, but you have 104 fever and you can't get out of bed. And he called me and he was like, Tyler, I have the flu and literally cannot get out of bed. And I was like, I'm so glad you're calling me because I do too. And I did not want to cancel on you. So it was like, that was a missed opportunity. The second time something happened. And then finally during COVID, I texted him and I said, look,
I've got nothing to do.
Yes. I feel like our schedules right now are very free. And I know it sounds crazy, but maybe now's the time for us to work together. What do you think? And I didn't think he would even really respond, but he responded right away and said, well, when could we start? And I was like, whenever you want. Like, I was just so happy he was even writing me. And he was like, tomorrow, question mark. And that's how the bar project started.
That's brilliant.
I think he had been watching everybody doing, because I think this was about like 6 months into the pandemic that we started working together. And so he had been watching me do my classes, watching many dancers. And I think he had been really interested in the bar being at the center of all of the dancers at the moment in the pandemic. And so I think he had already been creating the bar project idea in his head. So when I reached out to him, he was like, he already knew what he wanted to do.
So brilliant, so brilliant. And now this project, it's going to be brought, I just want to talk about his work because it's going to be the second part of your evening that you're bringing to London. Now, how much has it changed since, has it's been brought to life on the stage already, hasn't it?
Just once.
One time, one day.
Yeah. Well, sorry, for one set of performances. So 3 times we've danced it, but in one engagement type of thing.
Okay. And how has that changed and evolved?
Yeah, he changed it. You know, we made it really for the digital premiere. And so we were able to, you know, stop and cut places. It wasn't like running it fully. So when we finally made it, you know, for the stage, it was like, wow, this is very demanding and hard. You can't stop. There's no breaks. Quick changes are happening on the side because we were able to change wardrobe and, you know, not in real time for the video project. So
right.
Yeah. And then Bill also just, he's so funny. He'll keep changing up until 5 minutes before the show.
Well, a lot of choreographers do that. Wayne McGregor does exactly the same thing. It's like, no, I've already reversed it and been upside down. Please, please, please don't. Because they're so fast thinking. And that's what makes it incredibly exciting, you know?
It's so true.
It's live. It's really live working with these choreographers that, you know, make you think and feel. Now, I want to ask you about any other choreographers that you're working with. I know there's been so many in New York City Ballet, and I know that Alexei Ratmansky is about to come on board as well. Have you worked with Alexei before?
So funny. Yes. So I have tried to work with Alexei for, I think, 3 or 4 of his ballets. And every time he comes, I'm like injured. And I really haven't had that many injuries. But when he created Namuna, I was called, and that was my one back injury. And then I did do one ballet with him. I've only done one, and it's called Pictures at an Exhibition. And he made this amazing solo for me that I really love dancing. And then lately he tried to create another one for me when I was coming back from my neck injury. And I said to him, you know, Alexei, I'm not really jumping or turning yet. I'm like really starting from.
Could you give me a dole solo?
Yes. And he was like, that's okay. We'll just make it around that. And I was like, okay. So I like thought about it for a week, and then it was really stressing me out because I thought, I'm going to get in the room with him and he's going to try to ask me to do something, and I'm going to want to, you know, please him because I love working with him so much, and it's just going to be too much. So I had to say, I just don't trust myself being in the room. I know I'll do more than I should be. So I'm just going to stick with not new works. So I've only worked with him one time, but again, like he had a gig where he wanted his Sleeping Beauty to be shown. And instead of using the dancers that do it at ABT, he taught it to me because he wanted me to do his version at the gala. So I love working with Alexei, and I couldn't be more thrilled that he's coming on board, and we're going to have him. And hopefully I'll have many more opportunities and not be injured when he makes something.
Well, I'm sure you will. And it's very exciting, I think, for New York City Ballet. And I also want to ask you about, I mean, obviously you've had a change of director, and also Wendy.
Yes.
We both worked with in Morphosis, and we all adored Wendy. I mean, such a beautiful dancer and person. And interesting, we talk about changes and how we move on. And, you know, I'm now coaching dancers around the world, or particularly at the Royal Ballet, that I dance side by side with. And now I'm at the front of the studio. How does that feel, having Wendy at the front of the studio now at New York City Ballet?
I really enjoy having Wendy in the front of the room. I think too, because I had never had a female director. So it's nice to have somebody in the front of the room that has danced the roles, you know. That's really, I love that, because
she was such a perfectionist as a dancer as well, wasn't she? I mean, it was beautifully executed as well.
Yes, and we couldn't be more different of dancers, so it's not like the things maybe that worked for her worked for me, but still I just enjoy so much hearing her point of view. And you know, just I love getting feedback and corrections. I've always been that way. Not necessarily do I think that they all work for me, but I love hearing it. It's like, how much knowledge can you get? And then you find out what works for you, because what might work for one dancer might not look good on you or work for you. But I've always been the type of person to always want to listen and know. So I enjoy having her. I will say that we just did Peter Martin's version of the Sleeping Beauty, because it's his ballet, and he was at my performance, and it was very nice just to see your old director, you know, the person who accepted you into the company. So it was a very big change for a lot of us that had been there for a long time, but you know, we're all just finding our new ways all together.
You just have to move and change. That's life, isn't it?
It's very true. Yes.
And also now you're choreographing as well.
Oh, yeah. I always like, I mean, the funny thing is my mom would always say this to me. She was like, you know, when are you gonna, you know, start choreographing? And as a ballerina, you know, Leanne, there is no time for anything else besides trying to have your career, like when you're a ballerina doing the hardest ballets. Like the last thing you
have to, people often say, are you going to go into choreography when you finish as a dancer? And I'd say, well, it's like saying, are you going to pick up a violin when you stop playing? It's very, very, even more so, it's very, very different set of skills to be able to do that. And that's why I'm, again, you know, like incredibly, you know, surprised that you are doing that as well, in a great way, that is.
And this is the only reason I think I even am, is because at my mother's dance studio, I was choreographing all of her dances since I was like 11 years old. So I wasn't doing it on a professional dancer, but I was always creating and choreographing these dances for her. So Damien from the Vail Dance Festival was the one who initially asked me if I would choreograph, and I was like, oh, like, I don't know, that seems terrifying. And he was like, but you've been choreographing for your, you know, he'd be like, you choreograph those jazz dances all the time, like you just like whip it out. And a lot of times when you're doing your collaborations with people, you're choreographing your steps, you know. And that is true. Like as dancers, sometimes we do have to improvise and you do end up choreographing. But just the thought of doing it on like professional dancers at like a professional festival seemed very daunting. But he asked me at a point where I had actually just gone through a very hard personal divorce. And I think he got me at the point where I was like, you know, what could be worse than what I just went through? So I thought, I was like, you know what, maybe now is the time to change it, to try it. And maybe it will be horrible, maybe it will not be, but let me just try it. And
was it classical? Was it very classical? Or
it was. And it was funny because the girl that I actually choreographed it for got injured, so I ended up having to dance it, which also isn't ideal. But it was just very small. I started with, it was just 3 people. It was one lady with 2 men, and it was about I want to say like 7 or 8 minutes. Like it wasn't a big thing. It was just making a little, um, a small little piece for veil. And it ended up, I was kind of shocked that I was like, oh, it's actually kind of okay. Like it,
Fantastic.
it,
Did you
it
have any,
actually,
did you have any,
what?
did you have any mentoring for that at all? Did you reach out to anybody, or you just got on with it?
It's funny, I didn't, but the piece of music I used was something that had been made for me. It had been given to me as a gift from a composer friend, and
Wow.
he had taken themes from things I had done in my life. And it was like a gift for, I feel like it was like a Valentine's Day gift or something strange like that. But I think it was really easy to choreograph to because it was kind of going down like memory lane in a way. So I could hear, the theme of like the Broadway show in the background, or like this ballet that I did for the first time. So to me, when I very first choreographed, it was just me getting in a room and dancing myself, as opposed to relying more on the dancers. It was kind of me putting it on myself. And so that's how the first ballet came about. And then he asked me again the next year if I would do a second one. And I was like, I remember I put like the emoji that's like this. And I said, don't you think we should just leave it at like the person wasn't horrible? Let's just leave it.
Right.
And he was like, no, I don't think so. And that's where Thousandth Orange, the piece that you're gonna see was
That's
made
gonna be-
for, yes.
Yeah. So tell
And
me, please. And is it just
well,
is it a pas de deux, did I?
no, it's 6 dancers,
Oh, okay.
and it's around, I want to say it's more like 9-10 minutes long. And it's funny because, Daniel's like, well, let's talk about your cast, like who would you want to have in it? And he was like, how about Herman Cornejo? And I was like, I don't know about that. That's really intimidating because I had always just used younger dancers that were like more my friends that I knew wouldn't sort of judge me in a weird way. I wanted to just feel very
Experiment.
comfortable. Yeah. And I said, well, Herman's one of my favorite dancers. Like, obviously, I would love to, but I mean, I don't know, would he even want to be? And Herman was the best. So, Thousandth Orange, one of the main parts was made on Herman and Isabella Boylston.
Oh,
Yes. And they're not coming to London because it's so hard with the ABT and New York City Ballet schedule. They just like our weeks of layoff do not line up. So 2 dancers from New York City Ballet are dancing it. But it really was nice because it was when I was injured. And so I had to really focus more not on my body because I couldn't dance, but I really had to rely on the dancers in front of me.
right.
And I had said to Damien, I honestly don't know if I'll be good this way because I normally do it on myself and I come in with, some sort of preparation, but I really couldn't move. I mean, I wasn't allowed to move my arms or my neck or anything. So it was a really interesting process, but I really, really enjoyed it. And I think that was just, I can pay tribute to the dancers I had. They were just so incredible. And the music was good. If I like the music, to me, the steps come so easily. I don't know. It's like
Oh,
I kind of make ballets very quickly. I'm not one that takes a lot of time, and I don't do that on purpose. But with this ballet, I had to do it when people were available. So I never had the 6 hardly ever in the room at the same time. So it was like, okay, you 2 are available right now. Well, we're gonna make a pas de deux for you 2 right now, or like a 2 boys dance now. And so it ended up having a very interesting structure just because of availability of when they were able to rehearse.
brilliant. And that's the one that you did sitting there without being able to move. But that just makes me think when you say that, how incredible it must have been for the dancers, or I had the last bit of his life, but to work with Kenneth Macmillan because he couldn't really move. And he just sat there, but what he got out of the dancers, and sometimes when I'm incredibly energetic in the studio, getting up and trying to demonstrate or trying to show how something is, I sometimes have to reflect back on that time of how important it is also, to take a feather out of his cap, of sitting back and allowing the dancers to try various things. And I think there is something to that as well. You really need to do a little bit of both, but you probably helped them to be more creative in that process because of your lack of movement.
And it was funny because they would always say, like, well, where should the arms be? Because I could kind of show the feet, but I couldn't. Yeah. So it was like we joked that the whole piece was just like going to be with arms down because but it's funny because I asked Bill, I remember having a conversation with him and being like, I don't know if I can do this. And he said, well, when you can't move is when you actually will be able to see if you can really choreograph. And I was like, that's actually quite interesting advice. He's like, I think you should try it. And I said, okay. And Damien was like that. He said, just get in the studio and try. And if it doesn't work, you just come to me and you tell me, but like, let's just not count it out just because you're injured. It would be great if you could still be creative. And I really am so glad he made me do that because it kept me going in a time where I was really struggling, and I wanted to be back dancing and I couldn't, but I had this new way of being creative, and it was choreographing something and watching these amazing dancers make this incredible piece, in front without me dancing. It was awesome.
And it opens your evening at Sadler's Wells.
Yeah, it's funny because I kind of needed it as a break, right? Because I wanted these evenings to have a good kind of through line. And I thought, well, I can't dance in every piece, obviously, but it would be great if it could be choreographed by me, because then that still kind of makes it, part of my evening. And then it just so happened that it's really an opener. It's not an in-between kind of thing. So I end up dancing 3 things in a row, no matter what.
That was my next question. I mean, I want to hear about the choreographers and everything, but I'm really fascinated to hear how you're going to spread yourself through the evening, because I know it's very, very difficult to structure these evenings focused in on one particular person.
And
so
I changed it.
How are you going to do that, Tyler?
And I changed it a bunch of times because I was like, well, it just makes sense for Thousandth Orange to be one of the rest, But then I had to look at it on what was better for the evening, and making sense. And because we almost opened with Bar Project.
Right.
Bar Project, intermission, and then did the others and ended with Michelle's. And that was like up until like the day or two before, I was like, I think we need to change. And then I thought, no, I really wanted to end with the Bar Project because it felt so much like a piece in itself, but also what was nice about it is it was 3 gentlemen with myself, and it felt like that was kind of what the evening this evening in particular should end with. I don't know why, but that's just what I kept going back to. But I really struggled with the order. And so Thousandth Orange opens it. Then it's a duet that Alonzo King made for me. And then what we did was we structured Michelle's in a way where I don't come out for at least the first 7 minutes.
Wow.
So that's my rest step.
Tell me about Michelle, because she's a tapper. Tell me about, I don't know about her. I'd love to know more about her. And I mean, I don't know a lot about Alonzo even. I mean, of course I know Alonzo King.
Yeah.
But close and personal.
Yes.
Tell me a little bit about the choreographers as well, and as well.
Yes. So Michelle Dorrance is pretty much, I think, arguably one of the best female tap dancers that we have today. She trained with Savion a very young age. And then she went in and did Stomp. And then she opened up her own company called Doran's Dance that tours. I believe they've come to Sadler's. And she's like a tap genius. She's got so many creative ideas. She respects the ballet form so much because her mother was a ballerina.
Fabulous.
And yes, and my mother was a tap dancer as well as a, top ballet. So I was horrible at tap, but my mom was an amazing tap dancer. And I think I always had this appreciation for it because one, I couldn't do it and I just found it so fascinating. So when I saw Michelle, I probably met her when I was 16 years old, and we did this like review of So You Think You Could Dance. They like got a tap dancer, a ballerina. They got somebody from every form of dance, and they had us like review the show So You Think You Could Dance. It was very strange, but that's when I met Michelle. And I just thought, wow, we just clicked, and I just found her so fascinating. And I started kind of keeping up with her and always watching everything she did. And she became like a MacArthur fellow. I mean, she's very, I mean, she's a huge deal now. And we've always just tried to work together. And we would always see each other in Vail, of course, because Damien always brings together all sorts of different artists, like where we met. And we finally were just like, let's make a piece. I needed another piece for this evening that felt full, and I wanted it to be with a female choreographer. And we brought in Julian, so it's actually 3 female choreographers together, which was amazing. And I just think that there's so many interesting similarities with using the point shoe sounds when we want to use the sounds. We don't want to hear it when you're doing classical ballet, but there is a way to make a sound that can be very tap-like. And my mom used to actually have point shoes that had taps on them, and she would like dance on point.
Wow.
So that kind of idea is kind of where we started with this. And it's actually one of my most favorite pieces on the program that I'm excited for the London audience to get to see. I really, it's just a good time, and we all are so excited to get back together and put it together because it was like too much fun. Like you felt like you should be getting in trouble because we were having so much fun on stage. You can't have that much fun while performing.
That's what Bill says as well, isn't it? You got to have fun.
Yeah.
Got to have fun. But are you in point shoes? Are you in
Yes.
tap point shoes?
Not tap
away-
point shoes,
giving
but
away.
there are 4 ladies. We are in point shoes.
Fantastic.
Yes.
Well, I just can't wait. I can't wait to see that. And
Thank
tell
you.
me about Gillian.
Jillian. So Jillian is actually through Michelle, because Michelle said, if we're going to do this, well, she said, if I'm going to do a piece, I want you to choreograph it with me. And I was like, oh, Michelle, I think you should just take it, And she was like, no, if we're going to be working with, tap dancers and ballet dancers, like I'm going to need someone to be choreographing it with me. And I said, okay. And then she goes, and there's another person I think we should bring into the project, and it's Jillian Myers. And Jillian, she's kind of like, she literally wears every single hat. Like she is an LA based choreographer dancer. So she's done things like being a dancer for like Janet Jackson, as to like associate choreographer for like the big movies like La La Land.
Right.
So she's really big in the commercial dance, and I guess contemporary jazz kind of dance world. And so it was a perfect kind of like little team, because we were all so different. So it was like we had the tap dancer, we had the like more contemporary mover, and then the ballet dancer. And so we could, along with the dancers, really make something super interesting. And so we each just kind of, Michelle found the musicians. You'll see there's 2 musicians that were her friends. And we built off of the music first. And then, Jillian said, well, this part's really speaking to me. We're like, great, take that section, go make that section. And it was it's the one with the 4 ballerinas, which is kind of incredible. that it wasn't like, that's the part I made. So it was really interesting the way the structure came about, but that's Jillian. And then Alonzo, like you said, Alonzo King. It's like we all know Alonzo King, but we don't really know him. And that's how I felt. It was like Alonzo King has been around forever. Lions Company is incredible. I don't get to see them perform much because they're mostly based in San Francisco and then like tour, but they don't really tour that much to New York. So I hadn't really seen them. But Bill talked a lot to me about Alonzo and about how much he respected him. Like I could really get a sense of the respect he had for him. And so it was actually Bill that I wrote, and I said, I kind of, after Bar Project, I think like to work with Alonzo. Like, what do you think about that? And he was like, here's his number, just make sure you tell him I connected you. That's what he said. And so again, it was like me reaching out to Alonzo during the pandemic and saying, I had seen a piece of his at the Vail Festival, and I thought, wow, I would really love to get in the room with this man. Like he's like a philosopher. I don't know, the way he talks about the movement, it's so, I don't know, it's not just steps. I felt like I would learn a lot just being in the room with him. And to me, I found that very interesting. So he created a positive for me during the pandemic. And again, like it hadn't been seen. And I was like, okay, all of this stuff needs to be seen in the show, not just digitally, so that's
really for the first time as well at Sadler's Wells, or
we performed it at the Kennedy Center when we made it, but it was for it to be streamed, and there was maybe 100 people that were able to watch it. It was like when vaccines were just first, so they had 100 people like spaced out, so it didn't really feel like we had done it live, even though we had. And the first time we had done it really was for the City Center show. So again, it's only been performed, those 3 performances, again, like the Bar Project.
And Michelle's work, that was performed
same
as well.
Thing. That was made for that City Center thing.
Fantastic. And now tell me, where else are you going to take this?
Well, we're hoping a lot of places. I know that, I'm hoping to do both international and domestic. So, we're trying to take it to the West Coast and Kennedy Center. And then, I know we've been in talks possibly like Japan or Australia. Those are exciting to me because I've never danced in Australia.
There's quite a few festivals there as well.
Yeah, I've been hearing about them, and I didn't know about them, but yeah, so hopefully something will make sense and we'll get to go to one of those.
Oh, they'd adore to see you there, I'm sure.
I don't know, I hope so.
I'm sure they would. That's great. So this time you're just coming to London and then flying back?
Yes, we fly back because the next day we go into New York City Ballet rehearsals for Spain tour that we go to Spain in a week. So I'm literally coming home to rehearse for a week and then go back to, Europe. We're going to Spain for New York City Ballet. That's what's hard is there's so many venues that want the show, but it's so tricky with the New York City Ballet schedule because we have very few weeks that are off. So it's finding what festivals kind of fit in with those weeks.
And Tyler, you're a permanent member with New York City Ballet? You're not a guest?
No, I've been with the company. I believe this is going to be my 18th year.
Because it's always tricky, isn't it? Having the time to go out, fly and spread your wings and yet be part of a company, because I think it's really important to be part of a company. It
grounds you.
It really does. So
to me, I think so. Like, I just love having class every single day, and I love continuing working. And I just feel like if I wouldn't be happy just guessing because I wouldn't feel like my technique and stuff. I don't know how you would keep that if you don't have that like home base in a way.
Yes, I never had any ambitions to be a
Yeah.
guest in that way.
It's stressful, it seems like.
Yeah, because the daily class is so, so important, and the training and the people that you're used to training with to keep the highest level. Otherwise, it's very stressful to just travel around the world with a suitcase. So I think
Yes,
it's great. I think what you're doing is fantastic. I really do.
thanks.
So just future ambitions. I can't imagine there's a lot more to squeeze out because you've squeezed out so many. It is amazing, you know, to be so creative. But do you have any other burning ambitions?
I mean, I've always really wanted, so we didn't talk about this much, but when I was in California, I did a lot of acting. I think that's just like what you do when you're in California, because Hollywood is so, you know, much of California. And so that's why I really enjoy getting to dance the story ballets, because I love getting to play the characters like, you know, Swan Lake or Aurora or whatever it is. So I think, and that's why too, if there's something that fits that's a Broadway show that makes sense, where I get to also act and use my voice and dance, like, of course that's what I originally thought I would do, was, you know, more Broadway type things. And I'm so, so glad that I ended up being a ballerina, and I love it so much. But I think that there's a part of me too that sort of misses that side. And I don't know if it would be like a Broadway show or a TV show. I don't know. There's a part of me, if there was something that would make sense, you know, I'm not one to have unrealistic goals, you know, like I don't think that I'm, you know, like Emma Stone and could be like, you know, the lead in a movie. But if there were something that would make sense like that, I think I would really enjoy that. And then I think I've really enjoyed getting to put together these shows. And I think that has helped me realize that maybe one day I would like to direct, because I feel like I have a lot to give. I love, well, you probably feel this too, like being in the front of the studio and getting to pass on. I really love that part of the dance world, and how much it is so much by what is passed down from dancer to dancer. And I also feel like I've had a lot of experiences with different choreographers, so I feel like I understand the way I want to run a room.
Yes.
And how I definitely do not want to run the room. And so I think that that's a hard transition sometimes to, like you were saying, be dancing with somebody and then have to be in the front of the room, you know, choreographing or directing them. And I think one thing I'm proud of is I think I have a really loving way about running a room, but also being able to get what I want out of the dancers and get what we need done. And I think that's a hard trait to have. So that's one thing I feel like I can be proud of, that I found out just through doing these shows, because you wouldn't know if you weren't put in the position.
I don't think you know. And, you know, I mean, I felt when I retired, I didn't want to do that because I wasn't sure. But coming back and stepping in and then seeing how that felt. And also, it's very important to know that you're going to be good at the next thing. You know, once you've hit that highest level as a ballerina, you know, you want to know that you're going to have the same sort of feelings in the next career or your sideline or whatever else you're going to do. And I think the other thing is that having worked with a lot of choreographers as well as coaches, I'm sure you find this as well, having worked with a lot of coaches and sort of discovering what makes you tick and what doesn't make you tick is something else you learn in the process that you can give back when you're at the front of the studio. So I can imagine you'd be absolutely terrific.
I same with you. I wish I was in the room with you. They're so lucky that they get to have you there.
I'd be giving way too many corrections. You wouldn't like it, Tyler.
No, I would. I probably really would.
Well, Tyler, it's been amazing to chat to you. Absolutely incredible. And I know that there are some audience questions, and I'm going to pass you on to Susan, who's going to, because she's going to read some out that are coming through to her.
I hope we get to see each other when I'm in London.
Well, I hope so too. Are you going to have a good time not being in your point shoes?
Yes, we'll make something.
You're doing 3 performances though, right? No matinees. It's just the 9th, 10th, and 11th.
That's right.
March.
Yes.
Fantastic. I'm going to find you.
Okay. Yeah, I get there on the 3rd, and I don't think I really start until the 6th. So I think there is some time. Yeah, we'll figure it out.
Listening into our
Sorry.
calendar. But we'll definitely get together when you're here.
Okay. Thanks, Leanne. I love seeing you.
Amazing talking to you, and all the best for your show coming up.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Leanne. That was wonderful. Let me go through these questions and then we can carry on from there. Some of them you've actually answered already because Leanne's asked all the right questions, the things we wanted to hear about. So let me see. Jocelyn is asking, do you think that ballet dancers today benefit from more cross-cultural work by dipping into musical theater, contemporary, tap, hip hop, and so on, in which you are a trailblazer?
I will say that I think it makes it easier when choreographers come in, because I feel like that was sort of my niche that I had, and why the new choreographers always picked me, I think, to be in their new works, because I was adaptable and I had more versatility. I'm not to say that that's the only way to do it, or that's the right way for you, but I do find that the dancers in the New York City Ballet, at least, that come from a background similar to mine, are the ones that typically the new choreographers they lend themselves to be in their ballet. So I think it just gives you more opportunities in a way.
Do you enjoy it yourself?
Yes.
Doing all different, I think it comes through loud and clear that you do, but is there something that you particularly find exciting, whether it's, doing the contemporary or dipping into hip hop or something like that?
It's funny because I think when I very first got into the company, that was what I felt more comfortable in, and why things like Aurora seemed to be so far out of my reach, because I just didn't grow up doing those variations like everybody else. And so if you put me in a tutu, it was like all of a sudden I'm like, oh my gosh, now I'm actually having to do ballet. But when I started trying to find out, okay, I have to find the way of doing the classical ballets, but still feeling like it's myself and not like I'm trying to dance it like I think I've seen before, because that just didn't fit me. And I think that that's why for Aurora this time around, yes, of course, it's like the epitome of classical ballet, but I also, can't dance it like Leanne dances it, just because that's not the way I dance. And if I tried to do it exactly like her, I mean, first of all, I would just never look like her. But second of all, it wouldn't feel right to me. So I had to kind of get through that barrier in my head. And that was a struggle for me. But now it's funny because I find myself wanting more new works created that are more classically based. I'm like, all these choreographers come in and they're just doing more contemporary work. Like, let's let's do something that's based in classical ballet and make it interesting. And I want more of that. It's kind of like I've gone the reverse.
I just love, I'm going to butt in here because we're very similar in our thoughts with this, Tyler. Because I grew up doing so many forms of dance. Susan knows this, but I never thought I'd be a ballerina. And so when I got into it too, because I did tapping and modern and jazz and Irish and Scottish, because I came from a very small school in the central Queensland, So I'd never done a classical ballet solo either before I came to London at 16. I just did little dances, but mostly singing and tap and modern. So my comfort zone was when I could move and when I didn't have to wear a tutu. As soon as I put a tutu on, I felt, even though I know I was known for my as well, it wasn't where I had my comfort zone at all. Very unlike Marianella or somebody like that, who actually absolutely adores to put a tutu on.
Isn't that funny?
That's incredible, because for me, as soon as I could get the tutu off,
oh, me too, you dance differently.
Bill and you, just dance differently. So it's fascinating for me to hear you say that as well. But I think it's all to do with our upbringing and what we did at a very young age. And then,
of course.
And I think I felt the same. I felt if I had gone back to the classics even later, I would have had a different mindset, because I felt like I had to be so perfect in the classics. And I think that's what I try and tell the dancers when I'm now at the front. You do have to be beautiful. You do have to work on everything, but perfection is often overrated. You want to be yourself and move as well. So I hear you, Tyler.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so true. It's like a chiffon skirt, even for me, like something like chai pa or that. Like if I had to do that in a tutu, I would dance it so differently and it would not feel as free.
Yeah. I hear you.
Well, and from the audience point of view, if I can butt in, perfection is lovely, but if you don't grab me in my heart, or it doesn't matter how perfect you are. So, and I think a lot of audience members feel that way as well. So just keep doing what you're doing.
Thanks.
Okay, so now there's another question. Oh, another part of Jocelyn's question. Which ballerinas have inspired you the most?
Oh, this is a good question. Well, when I very first got into the company, I really looked up to two dancers. Of course, Wendy, because she was like, the ballerina, I guess, who had been in the company the longest, who I had sort of just watched, and Miranda Weiss, who to me was more of, I think, my type of dancer. Like she was classical and perfect, but she, like Leanne, she really moved, and I could see something that I wanted in her, the way that I wanted to dance. And then Heather Watts has been a very big influence, who is Damien's wife, and she was a principal in the New York City Ballet for 20 something. I think she was in the company 20 something years. And she has kind of been with me every step of the way. I've been very fortunate to have her as like a mentor coach in my life. And we worked on beauty this time, and it was really about like, okay, like I want you to pretend like you don't have the tutu on and not do it like every perfect little arabesque you've seen. Like that's just not you. And maybe that's why I really am enjoying it this time around, because I really am just dancing it and not trying to be somebody that I think Aurora needs to be.
Right.
Perfect.
Yeah. Let me see. Donald, he's looking forward to your London shows. He asked how you picked your collaborators. I think you've answered that. And who inspires you as a dancer? That's kind of the ballerina question too, but there may be something more. Can you talk about that?
I think I'm really inspired by like dancers that move me, like Susan, like what you were saying, like the ones that you watch that you almost can't say why you watch them, but it's just something that draws you to them. And I think that that's what's been amazing about getting to put together this show, is that I get to pick all of those dancers and put them into one show. And hopefully, everybody will be moved by that, because it's a motley crew that I have together, but it's all ones that I think they're my favorite dancers, my favorite dancers to watch. And so yeah, I guess I'm inspired by, I just love dancing, and I love watching dance. So when somebody's moving, that really moves me.
Yeah. Well, and having the people that you feel so comfortable with and enjoy being with just ups the game too, doesn't it?
Yeah, I always say surround yourself with better people that are better than you are, you know?
Tyler,
Um,
I was just going to ask Tyler, are all the dancers that you brought, are they from New York City Ballet?
So there are 6 dancers that are from New York City Ballet. And actually, I'm having to replace 2 because one just got injured in Sleeping Beauty. But yes, so 6 are from New York City Ballet. 2 dancers, Brooklyn Mack, who it's with Ian B, I believe.
Sorry, I missed you there. You
Oh,
froze. Tyler, can
okay.
you on?
Yeah. So I was saying 6 dancers from the New York City Ballet, and then there's 2 dancers, Lex Ishimoto, who is he was trained. He went to Boston Ballet. He was on So You Think You Could Dance. He can tap. He can kind of do it all. It's crazy. And then Brooklyn Mack, who I think London audiences would know because I believe he was in E&B.
Right.
So those are the ballet dancers, and then there's Michelle and her very close associate. She always works with Byron, who are mostly the tap dancers, and then Jillian, who's like everything, and then there's 2 musicians.
Ah, okay, great.
Yes.
so there'll be live music then, will there?
Yeah, everything is live besides the bar project, which is James Blake music. That was very important to me in putting together the show. I wanted all live music. So we have 2 musicians that come with us from New York that are in Michelle's and Jillian's piece. And then we're using a string quartet from London for the other pieces.
Fantastic. Oh, that's
Oh.
great.
Yes.
Yeah.
Live.
Yeah. Lovely, lovely. Live music is such a treat. Looks like the final question here is from Candice, and she's asking, can you talk about your fabulous use of platforms like TikTok and collaborations with other genre of dance like Gardner Brothers Rifting on the Wednesday Dance?
Yeah. Yeah, I just really enjoy getting to meet different people, and the Gardner brothers are Irish dancers, and I am so fascinated by their videos and Irish dancing. I never took Irish dancing, but I just find it so fun. And so a lot of these people I met during the pandemic, during my classes, and I thought I really wanted to use my platform to bring these people onto my class that normally the people that were taking the class would never get exposed to. So whether it was having a musician come on and sing while they were getting to dance or play the piano or this or that, I just felt there's probably so many people out there who've never danced to live music. And if I'm allowed to do that, and if I can bring that to them, like, wonderful. And so for the Gardner brothers, it was like, hey, can you teach us some Irish dancing? Like, I wanted everybody to learn from a bunch of people, not just me, but I knew that I had this class that everybody was tuning into. So I wanted to share. And that's kind of how I met the Gardner brothers. They came on, they taught a little Irish dance, and we found like, oh, what their beats were doing is very similar to kind of the ballet beats. And so then they finally were in New York, and they were like, we should meet in person. And so we met one day, and we filmed 2 videos. So it's so much fun for me, but also I really enjoy bringing joy to like my Instagram. That's really how my Instagram has always been. It's very much me and just having fun and sharing dance. And so that's all I try to do.
And do it well.
Yeah.
I see there's one last minute question come in from Fiona, and she's just asking, can you remind us what it was you danced when you were in London previously?
Yes, you know what, and Leah, I'm trying to think. I know that we went to with Morphosis to Sadler's, but I formed there.
Say that again. I lost you then. Say that again.
I know when we were in Morphosis, we performed in London, but I don't think that I performed. Like, I think you guys
did either, because I was going to ask you this question, but I thought maybe maybe I just couldn't. I was going to say, have I forgotten? But I don't remember you in that group in London. So maybe
I was there, but I do not believe I performed, because I think I was a part of like the tour wherein it was one stop, but I think this is going to be my Sadler's debut. And I've definitely danced in London with a company. I can't remember where we danced, but whenever New York City Ballet went on tour, that was the last time I've danced there.
Wow. But you will be dancing in Spain, will you?
Yes,
when the
I will
company
be
goes
in Spain. Yeah, I think I have every show there.
Oh, good. Because I mean, London to Spain, well, so many British people have a home in Spain anyway, or, you know, Spain is almost, it's like our Florida kind of thing, or, you know, Arizona. So where will you be in Spain? Because it's very possible London Ballet Circle members will show up to see you.
We are in Madrid. I'm not exactly sure of the venue name off the top of my head, but I know I'm pretty sure every single show I'm either doing a Justin Peck ballet, which ends the program, or I'm dancing Serenade. So I kind of swap off.
Fantastic. Fantastic. So all the details will be on the website, but that's great. Wonderful. Yes. Thank you.
Oh, look, somebody wrote.
Oh, somebody's written it. There we go.
They've looked it up.
Yeah.
Yep. Great. Well, that's wonderful. Oh, Tyler, Leanne, thank you so much. This has been great. Just sitting around, like, you know, listening to two friends who haven't seen each other for a while, getting caught up, and it's just great. The rapport between the two of you is obviously fantastic, and it's just been a real delight to listen in on the conversation. I know Leanne's titled her book Built for Ballet, but I think that phrase could very well apply to you as well. And your absolute joy that when you talk about dance, your whole face lights up, and that comes across the footlights, because I know that, because I've been in the audience at City Ballet and seen you many times. So thank you so much for just an absolutely delightful conversation. I know that a lot of people have already bought tickets for Turn It Out, and I have a feeling that those who haven't will be visiting the Sadler's Wells website as soon as we say goodnight on this call. All the best for what's going to be a terrific time in London, and I hope you have a chance to enjoy London as well as backstage at Sadler's Wells. And I want to thank everyone who's tuned in tonight to meet Tyler and see Leanne again. It's always a joy to have you with us. Without you, the members, the audience, LBC couldn't do what it does as a charity, and we're very grateful for your support. If you feel like making a donation so we can continue helping student dancers achieve their goals, please visit our website, www.tlbc.org.uk, and click on the donate button.